Testing 1, 2. What happened here? Let's see if we go over here more. Come on. What happened? Maybe too much. Too much. Test 1, 2.
Okay, now you can. So put that where you want it for you. And then we'll.
What's that white thing in the background?
Oh, look at it.
I think I go a little bit
It's a
further.
lamp?
No,
I
it's
can get
over
it.
here.
Oh, it's a roll.
paper
I'll get those.
towel.
That's why we're doing this.
Hi, Scott. Can you hear me okay?
Can you hear me?
I can. Thank you for being early. I appreciate that.
Well, I did one of these a couple of months ago with Boomer Blake, I think it was. And we could not connect. We spent an hour and we had my partner Gabriel Donahue on, so I want to make sure we get connected here. So
Totally. So what I've done, and I agree, we got to keep this professional, is I've elicited the help of my wife, who knows a lot more than I do about Zoom, though I do a lot of Zooms myself, but she does it professionally as a marketing person.
Oh, okay.
She's going to chime in a couple minutes before we start, and just as
Okay.
a third party, make sure audio visual is good. And
Sounds
then,
good.
yeah, and then when we go live, she's just going to give me a thumbs up or thumbs down that we're live and everything's working. And then
Okay.
we're off and running. And so that's where we're at. I got a bunch of questions. I've done my research, and so this may go over a half an hour. Hi, who's?
Hi, I'm just checking before I leave.
Julia, my friend and assistant, who's helping me here.
Awesome. So visually, I can see everything. The lighting's good on that end. How's things this way?
Good.
All right. The audio seems good. It doesn't seem like I'm peaking or anything like that, and I can hear you fine. I tend to use a mic only because Scott, we're recording this, and
Right.
we're gonna share this and rebroadcast it later and all that stuff. And
Right.
And I'll send you that file, that MP4
great.
as well. So let me give my wife. I'll give her a holler, and she's gonna come on board, and I'll admit her, and then she can do a final third-party check.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Alrighty.
Yeah. So I can move. It'll just be nice. It's quieter if I'm not moving around. I'll be
Yeah.
outside.
So he said it might go over.
Oh.
We can't go over past 4 o'clock.
No. No, but you gotta get decompressed and you gotta go to work and work. So what time was it supposed to go to?
3:30, I thought.
Maybe 15 minutes over or something. Because we gotta drive. I have to go to work too. Well, I can always drive myself, but
Oh, no. Yeah, we'll be done by,
4 doesn't leave you much time to just get chilled out.
yeah.
15 minutes over would be fine. Okay, I'll mind my business and go outside. This time you'll be done. You got if you need anything, okay? You get plenty of charge. What does it say up there? I can't read it. About charge. Pretty fully charged.
63%. That should be
You're
fine.
all set. Okay, I'll be right outside. If you need anything, just let me know.
Michael McFarland Center. Okay.
All right.
Hello.
Danielle is here. She runs Zooms
Hi.
for a college for all the professors and all that. And so, Danielle, how are my vocals? And first of all, say hi to Scott.
Hi, Scott. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Where in Massachusetts are you guys?
Outside of Worcester in Central Mass.
Oh, okay. I grew up in New Hampshire, so I'm
Okay.
very.
Yeah, I work at Holy Cross
Oh, okay. Great.
from home.
We went there. Yeah, I know several people that went there. Yeah. Justice Thomas's wife went there, I believe.
Justice Thomas went there.
Justice
Claire-
Thomas went there.
Yes. Yeah.
I actually met him at a gig last year in Maine. He was
Oh.
the strangest thing. I ended up talking to him for half an hour. It was like so surreal. I worked in politics in my younger days, so
Uh-huh.
he was at a little fundraiser up on the coast of Maine. It was crazy. So
Oh, wow.
super nice guy. Oh my God. He and his wife, just as nice as can be. Yeah. So
Good to know.
Okay. Wow. Sorry to digress.
No problem.
How does Scott sound, Danielle?
It sounds great.
Is the vocal visual good, you think? Or enough lighting? Everything look good?
Yeah, he's great. Your background's a little
My background?
no, yours is fine. Yours is
okay.
fine. Tim's is a little, he's trying to go for the tropical feel. So
Yeah.
I'm actually in Key West. I could go outside by the pool and actually get the tropical right in the landing zone of the airplanes here, and it would be a nightmare.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
We're trying to recreate it here.
Yeah.
So sometimes it'll go in and out, but usually
Yeah.
it holds steady, and that's good. How's my vocals, Danielle?
You're good.
Okay, so our audio's good, our visual's good. So what I'm going to do now is go live to Facebook from Zoom. So if you can just hang on, Danielle, and give us a thumbs
Check
up
the Facebook.
I
Sure.
that it's on. So if you can log on to Kane Drums,
Yep.
that's where it's going. I'm going to try.
Okay.
it. Here we go.
All right. Well, have a great interview, guys.
Let's do this. Can you hear me?
I can.
Can you hear me, Danielle? What? It's a little bit of a delay to Facebook, but all right. No, that's okay. Thank you very much. All right. So probably give it a, because I edit this, Scott. I'll do a kind of a 10 countdown because I'll know where to start. And then we're just going to go right into the introduction and then right into my questions and everything like that. So.
Okay, and just so I can, how long will the interview go approximately?
Well, I have a half an hour, but I have a lot of questions. How much time do you have?
Well, I'd like to, because I play tonight. I have a 5 o'clock concert down, so we could go to like 10 minutes of 4. Would that be okay?
That's awesome.
Be like 50 minutes, 50. Would that be cool?
Yep. And let me, I just set my time on that. Let's go right to 3:50. All right, so I have my alarm clock set, and that'll jingle, and we'll be good to go. Okay. So, let's do it. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I verified it's live here as well. Welcome back, everybody, to Tiki Tim's Trop-Roc Tributes. My name's Tim Kane. Obviously, I'm a drummer. And this is the second season of this experiment, I guess. We're trying hard to feature singers, songwriters from around the country. We've had some great regional and national touring artists last year with us. And listen, I got real lucky. And I'm sure this gentleman can speak to you about luck as well, seeing that we just celebrated St. Patrick's Day, and I am Irish and a little bit Scottish. So we have with us none other than Mr. Scott Kirby. Scott, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Beautiful day here in Key West.
Well, if you know anything about Scott, he is a traveling singer-songwriter who tours nationally. Before COVID, he had 150-plus touring dates. He has, I think, 8 albums out, at least 7. I think it's 8. And spends his time kind of going between Key West, New Hampshire, and anywhere he can find gigs. But his story is a lot broader and a lot wider than that. He has an incredible history musically and personally. And so welcome to the show, Scott.
Thanks for having me.
So let me start off by asking you, because I know you have a gig to get to. How are you faring with the whole COVID situation? Like, take me from last March to now.
Okay. Well, I was playing, my typical season is to play, particularly in the last 5 or 6 years when I don't live in Key West full time anymore. My typical routine for the last 5 or 6 years was to play, a dozen weeks at the Smoking Tuna between going back and forth to my home in Maine or shows on the road. And then be on the road pretty much full time, April through November. So I was down here last March on St. Patrick's Day when Key West closed all the bars at 7 o'clock at night on St. Patrick's Day. And so I hung around here a couple of weeks and enjoyed a completely empty Key West, nothing like I'd ever seen in my life, completely empty. Everything was closed, even the tennis courts. And I drove back home to my little house in Maine, I think on April 6th. And I had April and May completely off from performing anywhere. And the interesting thing about my life, the 6 years prior to COVID shutting Key West down, for 6 years, I had not slept in the same place for like more than 3 or 4 weeks. So my life was very, very nomadic. And so all of a sudden I'm in Maine with, at home for 2 months, no shows. And anyone out there who plays any instrument or plays any sport, or you can't just stop playing. I mean, so I decided to, during that 2 months I was off, to do 6 or 7 little Facebook Live concerts from my boathouse. And these were not to accept donations or anything like that. These are primarily to keep in contact with people and keep my skills up and keep my focus up to doing an actual show, because playing online for 2 hours is every bit as stressful as playing in front of a live audience, and in some cases more so. So that got me through to that got me through to June 1st. My friend and promoter in Texas last June said, Texas is open. I went to Texas in June. I played 8 or 9 shows in June. Texas closed. I went over to Arizona, had a couple of shows. Arizona closed. I went up to Colorado on vacation for a week. That closed. I transitioned to the Midwest for the entire month of last July, where I had 14 shows in the month of July in the Midwest. They all happened, outdoor venues. I had some shows, 6 or 8 shows in August, 6 or 8 shows in September. So that pretty much got me through to when I came back down to Key West late October of last year. And then, I've had 3 to 5 shows a week since the end of October in Key West all winter. And Key West is extremely busy. It would blow your mind to see the amount of people down here. And of course, the Smoke and Tuna is an outdoor venue, and we started with social distancing and so forth. And so that brings me to today, when about 4 weeks from now, I actually go out on the road again for a really busy summer. I mean, already booked coast to coast. I think from the end of April, when I leave, through September, I think we probably have 50 shows on the books already in probably 30 states. And it's, and I think it's going to be a really good summer, not to mention a musical trip to Ireland the last week of September, which hopefully will happen. So that's kind of my story for the year and where I am now. So
Awesome. You've answered half my questions. I'm just kidding. What I didn't know when I was doing some research about you is that you're the owner of Smokin' Tuna.
I was one of the original partners. There are about 6 of us, and I was one of the original partners, and still have a small piece in it. And yeah, so I was there from the very beginning when we opened.
When was that beginning?
That was 10 years ago. This June, I believe.
Okay, so I have a bunch of kind of rapid fire questions here.
Okay.
They can be quick answers or they can be more elaborate, but a lot of them are going to kind of dip back into history a little bit. First of all, are you doing anything lately with, I think it's called the MKM Band? Basically, that was you, Peter Mayer, and his son Brendan.
Well, we've got one show on the books for Annapolis in September. Typically, for the last 10 years or so, Peter and I have done a dozen shows together for 25 years probably. And we're both very busy with our own things, and of course he's really busy with Jimmy Buffett as well. And but I think it's about 6 or 7 years ago, Brendan joined us along with a harmonica player named Gary Green, and we did a live album, a Kirby Mayer album. Wrote an original song for the title track. And we typically in the fall do anywhere from 6 to 10 or 12 shows. That's kind of been our routine. Last September, we were pretty much canceled. The last time I played with those guys was last July in Louisville, Kentucky. And so we have one show on the books for September already. We may have a few more planned, but the way my schedule is, and Jimmy Buffett's got a lot of European dates in September, and I've got my Irish tour. So I think we're going to get kind of squashed this year and maybe just have time for, a handful or two or three. But oh yeah, we stay in contact, Rob. We talk all the time, and that's been so much fun. So
Take me back a little further then. Take me back to when you recorded out in L.A. with Mr. Russ Kunkel and Leland Schuyler.
oh,
Yeah,
Lee Sklar, yeah.
Is that a career highlight for you, or one up there?
It's definitely one of them. I've had so much luck, but I met Russ like 21 years ago when he flew into town to produce a Jimmy Buffett record. I think it was Barometer Soup. And they came into town 2 to 3 weeks prior to recording to co-write some songs with Jimmy. And of course, I've been a huge James Taylor fan and a Russ Kunkel fan. And the night they all arrived, I was lucky enough to get invited to join them for dinner, and really enjoyed meeting Russ, and we kind of clicked, and I was I was actually helping out being the guitar tech on that record. So I was around the studio a lot. He and I became very good friends, and stayed in touch. And then about 10 or 11 years ago, he had his own album out of like a jazz record that he played the drums on, all these wonderful songs that he had recorded the originals on. And so he came to Key West to promote that at the Meeting of the Minds, and he also played drums for me in a couple of shows. And so after that, he invited me, said, if you do another album, why don't you consider letting me produce it in LA? I said, well, sure. So, and then, I took it pretty seriously and spent the next 6 or 8 months finishing the songs. And I ended up in LA in his studio with, as you say, Lee Sklar on bass, Russ played drums and percussion. A guy named Dean Parks on guitar and lap steel is probably the most prolific studio guitar player of the last 40. I mean, he's played on, he has 12 pages of album credits. I mean, so I was in way over my head, to say the least. And but they made it very comfortable for me, and it's just, it's almost the good fortune I've had is almost hard to explain. So,
well, you seem very grateful, and that's obvious.
Yeah, I'm.
Yeah, you are, and the major people I meet in the music industry, that's a quality that a lot of them share, is being grateful. Listen, you've recorded 8 solo albums, at least 7. I think it might be 8.
It's 8. Plus the Mayor Kirby Mayor albums, I think that was 9. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and your last one was in 2017, maybe 2018.
Yes.
Right around there. So I got a couple like songwriter questions, because a lot of musicians watch this, and how have the solo albums evolved over the years? Have they changed stylistically, your approach, even from a musical technology going analog to digital standpoint?
The process for me hasn't. I mean, the technology has changed, but I'm not a technical person. I mean, a lot of my musician friends, they know Pro Tools. They're out recording on the road on the laptop. That's not me. I mean, I do 120 shows. I'm not a technical person in that way, and I put most of my. I mean, I still write my songs on a legal pad with the tracks on my iPhone, and so for me, that hasn't changed that much. The way that I approach doing a CD, I mean, I'm a lot more experienced at it now from the first one I did in '93. I actually I did a cassette before that, but my first CD I did, I think, in '92 or '93 at Shrimp Boat Sound with Peter and Jim Mayer and Roger Guth. That was another stroke of luck. And I've always approached them the same way. I want to do them with a band. I don't want to, even though I play solo these days 75% of the time, I've never done a solo album. I like to have a band flesh things out and but not have it overproduced. So that approach hasn't changed. I've worked with, you know, 5 or 6 different producers and a lot of different musicians, but my process for writing and preparing to go into the studio, it got a lot more sophisticated when I worked with Russ, because I want to make sure I went out there and, you know, had demos prepared, had, you know, lyric sheets, everything that they would need to record. And yeah, so that took my game up a little bit when I started working with him. And but my approach as far as analog, digital, that's, you know, not changed much. And nowadays, of course, now we're gone back to most people listen to music on MP3. So, I mean, the digital versus analog, and the you know, you strive in the studio to get this amazing sound, and then most people listen to it all squashed down on their earbuds or on, you know, iTunes or so. You know, that's a whole other thing.
Too much compressed. We could have a whole show on recording.
Right.
Well, you know, in just a kind of a follow-up question, you know, as a drummer, I've been a drummer since forever. You mentioned Roger Guth. You know, who are some of the other notable drummers that you've had the honor to play with or record with?
There's a guy named Matt Thompson who I've known. I did my last album in Nashville with Matt and Andy Thompson. I've known these brothers from Massachusetts, Norwell, for around 20 some odd years. They had a major record deal in Nashville years ago. Supremely talented guys. In fact, they played all 11 instruments on my last CD in their studio in Nashville. But Matt is a superb drummer, and solo artists tend to not, if they play a lot by themselves, when they get into the studio, tend to not have perfect time, because when you're playing alone, sometimes you take the liberty of speeding up or slowing down a little bit to create dynamics, you know, because you don't have a lot of, you can do it with volume, you can, you know, do it with the way you play, but well, that's not so good in the studio. And Russ explained that to me when I worked with him. He said, you know, you speed up and slow down to create dynamics, and that's, you know, we got to harness that in the studio, because that's really difficult for a band to do that. But Matt Thompson's a great drummer. I played a lot with Roger Guth. I love Roger Guth. He's one of my favorite people.
Why do you love Roger?
Because he's brilliant. He's a great songwriter. He's got an artist sensibility. He's sarcastic. He's outspoken. He's one of God's great curmudgeons. I say this to people: if I have, you know, 3 or 4 days left on the planet, I want to have one good session with Roger Guth with a case of wine. So, yeah, no, he's a great guy and a great drummer. He actually, I get intimidated playing with Russ, because he, you know, back in the day when we were doing a lot of shows together in a thing called Island Fest, where we all played together. This is 20 years ago. I would, you know, I could tell if I was out of time, because he'd give me that scowl, though. But and let's see. Let's see. I worked with some other drummers down here. Andy Morrow down in Nashville, and then trying to think of the early. Mark Weaver played on a few, but recently it's been, you know, Russ, Matt Thompson, and I worked with a great drummer in Philadelphia on a CD that was about 8 years ago, I think.
Awesome. I love that you give props to drummers. You know, back to Leon for a second. A lot of people may not know, and a lot of people may know, that he was the bassist for Phil Collins and Genesis for decades, really. Actually, Phil actively sought him out heavily to play on his first solo album coming out of Genesis, and then he ended up playing with Genesis for a bunch of tours. So it's pretty impressive that you were able to get Leon in the studio.
Well, Leland is, he was James Taylor's original bassist. He played all those Jackson Browne albums, and I saw him for many years with Lyle Lovett, and of course, as you mentioned, Phil Collins. But he is, again, one of the funniest, smartest people I've ever worked with, and I'll never forget the first day, because I was a huge Lee. I used to play bass a bit, so Lee Sklar was he was one of my heroes. So I remember sitting in the kitchen, arriving to the studio early, and being up in the kitchen waiting for the technicians to get ready to record, and just talking with Leland for an hour, and I said, okay, well, let's go down and work on your goddamn songs. Totally loosened me up, and these special people.
I watch his YouTube videos from time to time, and he's just talking about his history and his past, and he's just got such a great sense of humor.
We'll talk about a musician. I mean, I believe, and you may know better but I believe Leland was like a child prodigy piano player, and then he switched to bass in high school or something. But his sensitivity, he's amazing.
He's unbelievable. Well, sticking on songwriting, because I love talking with songwriters about songwriting. When you write a song, do you write it lyrically first, or from a guitar riff standpoint first, or is it a mix of both, or is it whatever inspires you?
I typically, my process is if someone says something, or I have a concept for a song, and then I would say 3/4 of the time I start with the lyrics, and about a quarter of the time I start with a riff or a chord pattern, as you spoke about. So it does vary, and sometimes it is a bit of both. And I think, I never really had any aspiration to be a Nashville songwriter. I mean, I didn't grow up with, I grew up in the Northeast, so my inspirations were all, the singer-songwriter movement. I didn't really have a lot of exposure to country, music when I was younger. So that was never a goal of mine. And when you're kind of just a performing, traveling singer-songwriter, let me put it this way. I think the great writers that write music for country radio and country artists, they have generally a basket full of about 10 or 12 topics, love, breakup, heartbreak, but then they're just genius at crafting these songs around those topics. And, I'm more of a storyteller. So, I kind of want to have something to write about that's somewhat unique, and not like the other, 10 songs I've written, or the other 10 songs that someone else has written, or that's a big challenge. So,
well, it sounds challenging to go from a lyric position of writing. Like I do some songwriting, but not nearly at anybody's level. But I never write lyrics first. It's always keyboards, it's a keyboard idea, and then I fit lyrics in, and my lyrics suck. They're not good. And so you make a good point about telling.
As long as you don't rhyme fun and sun.
You just said you're a storyteller, and I find the most successful songs out there are ones that tell some kind of story, and it just seems like country music is full of great storytellers more than any other genre. How much are you dipping in away or into country from Trop-Roc? Are they really one and the same stylistically?
Well, this is an interesting topic, which I've always struggled with the Trop-Roc thing, because I really, my inspiration were all folk rock people. Like, I mean, obviously the Beatles was number one. I was 9 years old. I mean, that was the number one. number one influence. And but then when I really was older, it really was, you know, I mean, I learned to really play the guitar by watching James Taylor and studying his music books. I had no formal training and no ability to read music. And so, I mean, all the records I listened to late high school, my 20s, they're all acoustic songwriter albums, all of them pretty much. I mean, not all of them, but 90% of them. So that's kind of how I, you know, and I'm the Trop-Roc label. I mean, like Jerry Jeff Walker, I don't know if he would really be considered Trop-Roc, and I was a big fan of him. I'm not sure Jimmy Buffett's first 10 records would really fit into that genre because there was no steel drums, and a lot of them were what was called Gulf and Western, and most of the production in my records is more folk rock, I guess I would call, or so yeah, I'm always a little, you know, a lot of my songs, because of my background, and I've sailed, you know, since I was a teenager, and
Have you really? You're a sailor?
Yeah, I've had like 7 sailboats. I've done a lot of sailing, and always, you know, my grandparents are from Newfoundland. I grew up near the coast of New Hampshire. So to me, I've talked to Steve Huntington about this actually at Radio Margaritaville, that, you know, I'm definitely very coastal inspired for a lot of my songs, but I think other people said, you know, but they don't necessarily fit in, you know, to a tropical theme necessarily, or a tropical backdrop. So I'm very lucky to get so much play on all the radio stations, the Trop-Roc stations, and of course Radio Margaritaville. But I'm still somewhat confused by, you know, by that, you know, where I fit in there. So and I think the same, you know, Peter Mayer. I mean, you know, I play a lot with Peter Mayer, and
yeah,
and
you hear Peter on like Roger Guth's solos. They're doing jazz.
Yeah,
they're playing jazz and
they're
fusion.
Right. So I think I'm, you know, definitely, you know, my inspirations were definitely James Taylor, you know, Harry Chapin, you know, Stan Rogers, who was a great Canadian artist, Gordon Lightfoot, that's Crosby, Stills, Nash, Jackson. I mean, that Tom Rush, that's totally all my, you know, inspiration. So, you know, and I don't think, and I love Robert Greenwich, but I don't think I've ever, in my 9 records, have ever used steel drum on a track. I don't think, as I've used marimba once or twice, but so I, you know, I don't know where. I kind of do what I do, and I try not to, you know, meld anything to go in a certain slot. So,
well, that's a good segue, because you, on your website, which is excellent, by the way, and the website address is scottkirby.com. Correct me if I'm wrong.
scottkirby.com. That's me.
You can check it out there. It's one of the best websites I've ever seen for a musician. You describe yourself on that site under your bio as a direct descendant of the 70s singer-songwriter movement. And you probably kind of answered this, but in the 70s, who do you point to? Who inspired you early on as that guitarist trying to find your way in the industry?
Well, it was definitely James Taylor. And I mean, you know, because I had no training, you know, I could buy Beatles books and strum the chords, and I could never play Beatles songs because Lennon and McCartney sing very high, and I could never sing those songs. I wasn't intelligent enough at the time to change the key or put a capo on or whatever. But I mean, the Beatles, I mean, you know, the first record I ever owned was a Beatles record, and most of the first music I heard at home, my mother was a choir director and a piano player, and most every record in the house my mom had were the great black artists from the 50s. I mean, that was her whole collection. So that was my early thing as a young boy, and then the Beatles. But then when James Taylor came along, I I think I was 17. There were 8 or 9 hours a day sometimes in my room trying to figure out what the heck he was doing. And his brother Livingston is also a very talented singer songwriter and a tremendous guitarist, and he teaches at performance at Berkeley in Boston. And I've seen him say in an interview that the one thing he pointed to, as great as James writes and as great as he sings, his guitar playing, was so much different and so strong at 21 years old. And I've got some tapes of his early concert when he was barely 21 years old. I mean, there's just the way he, carried the bass lines and all the chord voicings, and I just never really heard anything like that.
Well, and as you know, James Taylor doesn't live too far from where I'm at here.
Right.
He's out in the Berkshires, less than an hour away. And lately, he's been using a great drummer, one who I admire and learned early on from, Steve Gadd.
Oh,
who's
one of the best.
Yeah, he uses extensively. So, as a fellow New Englander, you grew up in New Hampshire. I think it was Concord, New Hampshire.
Right
around Concord, and you've spent.
Pennacook. I don't want to skip over Pennacook. I was actually from Pennacook, Ward 1 of Concord.
Ward 1, Pennacook.
The other side of the tracks, the last part of town for the snow plows. My mother would always tell me we're the last to get plowed in Pennacook. Different school district, but part of Concord.
Well, a lot of people not from New England don't know that a lot of towns and cities in New England have a lot of villages within them that have their own unique cultures and unique names. But what was it like growing up in Pennacook?
Pennacook, named after the Pennacook Indians. It was in a way an idyllic childhood, particularly now that I look back on it. Little mill town with 2 little mills. I don't recall what the population would have been then, maybe 1,000. But I could walk to school, a half mile to school, and had a great park in our town. And we lived, not a quarter of a mile from the giant Merrimack River, which I thought was the big dark Merrimack River, which I was prohibited from going near as a small boy. But
it's dangerous.
Yeah, and the segue was an aside here. When I was 9 or 10, a friend of mine and I found a rowboat down in these big ponds off the Merrimack River, and we took it over and we used it for 2 summers before our parents caught us fishing. We were down there, and it took them 2 years to figure out where the heck we were. We kept saying we're at the baseball field. Finally, they went to the baseball field. We weren't there for a week straight, so they followed us. And I think about it in today's world, about 2 10-year-olds having their own boat. It's almost frightening.
It's almost like Tom Sawyer. Yes,
it is. And to their credit, they said, okay, if you haul this boat out and bring it back to the house and fix all the leaks and get life jackets, we'll let you put it back in as long as you never go into that river. You never go under the little railroad bridge into the river. But so that was a great side of growing up in Pennacook. I mean, I think from both sides of my grandparents, I always had this wanderlust, and I always had this thirst to see the world and see the country. And I think some people have that in their DNA, and other people could care less. And I just have always had that. And I somehow was always, looking for some reason to get out and see the world. So.
Do you still go back there? Do you still visit? Or?
I actually, I have a house in Kittery, Maine now, which is about an hour from there. But no, I go back to Concord, see my 3 or 4 high school buddies and all my friends half dozen times a year, probably.
That's awesome.
And for the first time since I was about 15, getting down to these ponds where I had my boat, is this huge ravine. I mean, even as an adult, it looks enormous. I couldn't even get down there. So I had to walk a mile in on the railroad tracks to actually even see these ponds. And I actually did that a couple of years ago. And it was an amazing memory to just see where I spent so much time down there.
Well, if people don't know, I mean, the Merrimack River, it's a very industrial river.
Right.
And ends up in Lowell and
Right.
Lawrence, and it's very wide. It can be dangerous. So, did you ever write a song about you and your raft journey with your friend when you were 10 years old?
No, but I've written 10 new songs for a new album. I was up in Newfoundland a year ago, and I do make mention in one of those songs of the Merrimack River. And I should have read that. I haven't looked at the lyrics in a couple months, but I do mention, and I have one other lyric about being on a kayak. I have a song that basically is built around the concept you in life, you can't go left, you can't go right. You've either got to go backwards or forwards. And there is a reference in that song to being on a river in a kayak where you're coming, there's no going back, there's no left or, so, but I do make reference to the Merrimack River in a song that'll be on my next album.
Awesome. So early on, and this is on scottkirby.com's website, you took a break from music and pursued a political marketing type of career for about 8 years. That, from my understanding, you were quite successful at it. And I will add that once upon a time, I was a successful newspaper editor and reporter before the industry shrunk. I was always a drummer. Now I'm a drummer. How did that go, and why did you jump out of that trade? Was it just you had that burning desire that, you know what, I always wanted to be a musician. I really didn't want to be in politics.
I played in a band in high school, a pickup band, and then I played bass in a band and with some friends of mine up to the point I was about 23 or 4, I think. And then I came from a political family, and I think it was Howard Baker, who was a United States Senator from Tennessee, was running for president in 1980. And I had never worked on a campaign. And I think it was my mother said that they have no New Hampshire staff people, the New Hampshire presidential primary. And so I said, well, I don't know anything about anything about campaigns. So she asked me to just get out and speak with the campaign people. So to make a long story short, I've been around it my whole life because my grandmother and grandmother were heavily involved. And one thing led to another, and that campaign ended. And then someone offered me a job to work for them at the State House as an assistant. And then someone was running for governor, and then I get into someone was running for Congress, and then I ended up being the chief of staff at the State House for the minority leader of the New Hampshire House of Representatives. And to make this, it was 8 or 9 years of incredible, interesting time in my life. And, but I got to be in my early 30s, and I was like, what am I going to do, here? And was tiring of the weather and the long winters. And on vacation in Key West during that time, I'd met a gentleman named Gabriel Donahue, a great Irish musician who was playing down here in Key West. And I had not really owned a guitar for 8 or 9 years, but he really sparked me watching him play. And I was right at that point. I would say I was getting to a desperate point in my life that I really I need to do something else. I was not married. And so after giving it some thought, I gave my notice, and I moved to Key West in November of 1988, and was extraordinarily lucky to land a gig playing at the Pier House, like 7 shows a week for the entire first season here. I mean, and that's a whole nother story how I ended up with that gig. But and then I thought, okay, I'll do this a year and then I'll go back to the real world. And then, well, then I decided, then someone asked me to go play in Bermuda for 6 months. So I did that. Then now it's winter again, and I got my gig back at the Pier House. And then I met Peter Mayer, and then I started writing songs. And 2 years later, I'm doing my first CD in Buffett's studio, Jimmy Buffett's studio. So once I got on that kind of train, I used to tell people, you know, you have to have, you can't, it's difficult to go in the music business at the lower level for a long time unless you have some little increments of progress and success. And I always had that up until about 2002 when I really hit a flat spot. And I went back to New Hampshire and worked part-time in the Secretary of State's office and still toured. And then all of a sudden, Radio Margaritaville went on satellite radio, and all of a sudden, you know, I had a song called Lucky Enough that got a lot of play, and that just opened up a whole another thing of touring and being able to reach a wider group of people that has, you know, sustained me. And now I'm so grateful I've done this for, there've been some hard times and it's not an easy business, particularly last year, but I'm so grateful and that I chose this path. So,
well, you've done very well for yourself. As an addendum, my wife was on sound checking us earlier, and she's a heavy political volunteer and has been for quite a few years, working on campaigns, helping candidates, all that. So I can relate with how hard of a road that is, even as a volunteer and not as a full-timer. You know, I know you got to go to a gig, and I'm aware of that time. So I only have two more. I only have two more questions. I know you alluded to it earlier, but what's next for you once you get out of Key West and Smoking Tuna? What's up for tours? What are you doing?
I'm going to leave here the 30th of April, and I've got 4 or 5 shows up the East Coast on my way home. Also in the middle of that, I need to fly from Washington to Texas in the middle of that little East Coast thing to do an opening thing with Marty Stewart in Texas. And then I have a couple weeks off in May, and then I hit the road the end of May, and I'm headed down to Louisville and I think North Carolina, then to Texas, Arizona, some shows in California, back up, I think, through Idaho and to Montana. That pretty much eats up all of June. And then I come home for a week or two, and then I've got 3.5 weeks in the Midwest in July. Back to the like Atlantic states most of August. And then September, the first 2 weeks I'm in the mid-Atlantic states, and then off to Ireland like the 3rd week if all goes well. So that's pretty much it. It's going to be going to see a lot of the country this summer, which I'm dying to do because I didn't get a chance to do it last year.
I can believe it. You know, you've been going to Ireland for a while, huh?
Well, we've only done one musical tour because COVID came, and you know, so the second one got postponed to this coming June, and then we pushed it back to September because June obviously seemed too early, and of course it is. And we hope by the last week of September it'll be good to go.
Do you play more Celtic over there, or do you just play your music and they love Trop-Roc and the different styles you have?
Well, my partner is Irish, and he played with the Chieftains for a number of years, and so he and a tour director put this all together. So our thing is that we take 50 or 60 people with us, fans, and it's basically a tour of Ireland. So we play not every night, but probably 6 nights. We play a different part of the country in a pub or a theater, and Gabriel and I will play, you know, and you know, it's very acoustic, you know, and I think probably folks in Ireland probably view my music more folk country, or you know, I don't even think they probably know what Trop-Roc is, but. And then every night we have an Irish artist who plays after us. So people get a mix of both.
There's no drinking going on there.
No drinking during the gigs.
No,
But
not at all.
sometimes afterwards.
All right. Well, I ask this question at the end of all my interviews, and quite frankly, I've been down for a few months with this show, and I've noticed some other shows have started asking this same question. So I take that as a compliment because, you know, emulation is one form of flattery. And here goes. What advice do you have for younger aspiring songwriters? These are the kids coming out of music, coming out of Berkeley, coming out of music school, not even going to college and just going on the road. It was tough enough before COVID, and then COVID hit. And here's all these kids trying to, you know, make it in the industry. What kind of advice can you give them?
Well, I get asked this all the time because I'm at the age where I don't have any children myself, and I'm at the age where all my friends have children, and a lot of them are at that 25, 30-year-old where they're either musicians or they want to go in the recording business. So it's so difficult right now with the inability to get revenue through your recordings, and I think you've got to you've got to be able to play live. I think because the revenue stream of recordings it's pretty much just a promotional tool. So you've got to do both, but playing live is that's where whether you're me or Paul McCartney, playing live is where the revenue is. But on a more general answer to that question, I think people that don't follow their passion and their bliss, as Joseph Campbell used to say years ago, you're, I think, taking a gamble with your precious years on the planet. So not everyone can have their dream job, and believe me, I've had times out on the road where I've I couldn't find a bridge high enough to jump off in the Midwest. So it's not easy, but when you're doing something you really like, I think your ability to work really hard and suffer through a lot of pain and misery it's not so difficult. If you've got a job you hate, I don't know what the answer is. So I'm trying to be encouraging, but I don't have any magical answers. I have to say, I've been just so lucky that,
do what you love.
Yeah, I think do what you love or do something you're really interested in. And this is my best piece of advice. If you surround yourself with great people your whole life, you have no worries. That is the one. I read that in a book like 35 years ago. If you surround yourself with high quality people and friends, you'll probably never have anything to worry about. That's great. And I've been so blessed that way. It's beyond, describing. So.
Well, it's been a blessing to have you, and I'm very grateful to have you as my first guest in my second season of Tiki Tim's Trop-Roc Tributes. Next week, we have Jim O'Brien from the Island Castaways Band, another popular New England Trop-Roc band up here. In fact, I think you have a T-shirt from that band.
I think I do.
And so he will be on next week, great songwriter and guitarist. And we're trying to line up guests every week. Stay tuned for more details on that. Scott, thank you very much. I wish you the best of luck in Key West and out on your tour. And perhaps you can come back on the show down the road and check in with us.
We'll do it live in New England somewhere.
Awesome. I'm there. I'm there.
Hey.
All right. Have a good gig tonight.
All right. See you soon.
Bye now.
Bye.